My inspiration to create comes from so many different sources, but the three topics that I often find myself reading about are the ways in which people handle complex emotions and how they navigate a difficult world whilst still finding a space for growth and tenderness. I also keep reading around feminism, sisterhood, womanhood. Any of those three topics is something that will keep interesting me, I think. And then the final one is friendships and relationships in all their forms, really. I also keep thinking about the specific struggle that people my age, millennials, are going through. We were told a story about a world that never delivered on its promise, and that is difficult. But that also means that a lot of us made the decision to actively break unhealthy cycles and seek help. I've also been wondering about how to grow relationships that aren't transactional in nature. The way that capitalism kind of pushes you to view relationships strategically must have an impact on intimacy. And finally, more generally, how we survive and go on living our little lives when it feels like the world is literally burning. My favorite books are The Fifth Season by the amazing N.K. Jemisin. And it, well, perhaps unsurprisingly, actually kind of addresses the end of the world. Next, we have Ensemble c'est tout by Anna Gavalda, about three people who hold each other up through their imperfections, through their difficulties. Then we have The Color Purple. Now, the level of craft present, just incredible. Alice Walker created magic, just the depth of emotion and the range of elements that she somehow managed to bring together in her storytelling keeps impressing me. We also have Du Domaine des Murmures, which has drop-dead gorgeous prose written by Carole Martinez, and in a sort of indirect way, I feel like it talks about female power and specifically voice, the ability to speak, and who is listened to, and when they're listened to. And yeah, it does talk about female power, but in a complex way. It addresses its beauty, but in a way also its precarity, and how painful and ugly it can be to have to force it through unsurmountable obstacles. Now we are moving on to Beloved, which is a hard read. It's an incredibly hard read, both in terms of theme, but also just as a dense piece of work. But the effort is 100% worth it. Finally, last but definitely not least, we have Women at Point Zero. And the premise for this particular story is essentially the narrator goes to a women's prison to interview a woman who has been sentenced to death. That particular woman is Perdus, and the story that she has to tell is fucking heart-wrenching and beautiful. And yeah, I think it's safe to say that she never fucking left me. Now, I cannot film this video without talking about films, because of course I also love film. That's why I'm here. And some of my most cherished are La Cité des Enfants Perdus by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. The detail brought to the world building is insane, and the characters like Miette live rent-fucking-free in my brain. There's a more recent Finnish film that's captured my heart that's called Girl Picture, where every frame tells a complete story. It's just stunning visually. And it's basically about two friends who are young and are trying to figure out their lives. Then we have The Secret of Kells, which is an animation movie, and it is also, again, visually amazing, and it really manages to capture sort of traditional elements of Celtic art and tie it to a really compelling story. It kind of reminds me of fairy tales that I grew up with. Now, I do also want to talk about A Separation, which is an understated and subtle movie by Farhadi. But God, I have to say, like, the writing is incredibly strong. There's just something so believable and authentic about the portrait of the family that inhabits this particular movie. The characters feel like real people, in particular the main character, the main female character. Now the next one is Circumstance, and it's about these two women, young women, who fall in love with each other, but they happen to live in Tehran, where that's obviously a little bit of a complicated situation. And it is such a juicy, sensual, but also dramatic and sad queer story of star-crossed lovers. The chemistry between the two actresses is crazy. Looking at the list, I can see that a lot of these books are somehow about empowerment, I guess, in broad strokes. But they're still very different to one another, and actually I don't really feel like that summary of them being about empowerment really does them justice. Maybe it's more about the stakes present in the stories, the way in which people save each other heroically in non-heroic ways. Most of these stories are quite dramatic, I guess, but I think what draws me to them is that there's still hope that sustains me in sort of reading and coming back to watching these stories. And obviously the other thing is the characters are fully rounded. In particular, the women don't fit into the stereotype of the strong woman, whatever the fuck that means. No, they're complex, they're flawed, they're believable, they're relatable, and because of that they are entirely compelling. I have mentioned fairy tales previously. Now, I don't have a favourite fairy tale, but I did grow up with my mom reading Irish fairy tales to me. And a lot of those stories, like Fionn and the Salmon of Knowledge or Cuchulainn, have stayed with me. There's something so haunting about them and about the way that they're written and the way that they're meant to be told that stays with me. Like, there's just an Irish specificity to storytelling, and it evokes a kind of melancholy feeling, and yeah, I don't know, I guess I really like that. My absolute favourite childhood book was not Harry Potter, though I did love it, but I happened to read it much later. No, it was Northern Lights, and this was such a crucial book for me. The protagonists were children, but their emotions and their fears and their dreams were taken seriously. And that changed everything. And I think it helped me as a young human to take my dreams and my emotions and my fears seriously. Yeah, I kind of also love that the fairy tales in the Northern Lights series have the casual presence of magic, and I really would like to incorporate that in my own work in the future. Speaking of the future, there are a couple of topics that I want to explore, such as joy, beauty and its impact on humans, love and intimacy in all its forms, food as a way to alchemize belonging and create community, but also food as nurturing and as an art form in and of itself.